Right. See if anybody jumps in now that we've started. Might be just us. It's looking that way. Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Independent District Commission Community Engagement Workgroup meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 28th, and we will be here from 7 to 8 p.m. Commissioners and any community members listening in, welcome, and thanks for joining us. And real quick, I just want to go over the Zoom and just take 1 minute. This meeting is being recorded for later viewing, and a copy of the recording is going to be posted to the Independent District Commission meeting website under past meeting and events. For today's meeting, we have closed captioning available. You just click on the CC button at the bottom right of your screen. Commissioners, as always, please set your chat settings to everyone so folks listening in can follow along. And community members listening in, we have the Zoom Q&A feature available. Feel free to submit questions or comments through there. We may not be able to answer all the questions today, but they will be part of the meeting record. Lost my mouse somewhere here, 1 second. There it is. And I'm just gonna review the agenda really quickly before we get started. After we adopt the minutes from the last work group meeting, which folks have signed off on already, we will spend 20 minutes workshopping our community engagement work plan. Then we're going to spend time discussing your community engagement approach for the public hearing, followed by a brainstorming session for community stakeholders we would like to engage. And we're just going to finish up with a couple of quick next steps and then adjourn. Any questions about the agenda before I jump into it? Awesome. It's not advancing for me. All right, and really quick, I just wanted to take a moment to go over some of the questions that were that y'all came up with in our last community engagement work group meeting, and really centering around community, defining it, community priorities, and just so to give a quick reminder of what we came up with the last time around and kind of create a lens for us to focus on as we discuss community engagement. The first group of questions y'all came up with, we tried to put them into different buckets, is defining community. One, how do residents define community in terms of social, political, geographical, and economic alignment? Two, how do residents define established communities across Portland? Three, what and where are community centers, i.e. shared spaces where residents attend social, political, economic, health, and well-being purposes? Four, are there geographical boundaries representative of the change in community priorities? If so, where? Five, how and where is intersectionality realized? Six, what are the terms and basis used to distinguish their community from other Portland communities? As far as community priorities go, what are community priorities? How are community priorities elevated as collective matters, and how are priorities communicated and executed? Community experiences is the final group, and the first question is, how do residents experience their part of the city? How do residents experience and recognize other Portland communities? What do residents value most about their community? Are there intra-community inequities, and are there inter-community inequities that exist in Portland? Where are those boundaries for all of those? Did anybody have any questions or comments about the questions from the last session before we start diving into this work?
So I'm happy to jump in and just wanted to make sure that the questions that I had added or the comment that I had added was incorporated. I saw the draft meeting minutes that you attached to the email had them still as a comment and not incorporated. And basically my suggestion, I'll like copy paste in the chat here for everybody, just so from the document. And basically, I love what Commissioner Judd had put forward in terms of all of these questions. I think they do a fabulous job of getting at like the nuances of everything that we're talking about and really capturing the past conversations we've had. And I had like offered a suggestion for, because part of our other conversation, I think last time had been, how do we keep even these questions as like simple and accessible as possible? And so I had offered some suggestions of sort of like the bottom line of what I think these questions are trying to get at. So like, how would you that we could actually kind of ask of people? How would you define your community? What physical places are most important? What geographic and physical boundaries are important? And what should the commission know about your community? So I'm not saying that these need to be the questions like instead, but I would like to make sure that they're incorporated as we're thinking about what sort of like outreach we're doing to communities in advance of these hearings and what specific questions we are posing and how we're making sure that those questions make it really clear the information that we're trying to gather from folks.
Yeah, of course. Do you want me to hop over and just read those? I know they're in the chat, but we might as well just read them out so we can have them, heard. So the 4 questions are: how would you define your community in Portland? There can be more than one. What physical places are more important to this community, or where does this community gather? What geographic and physical boundaries are important to this community? What are the physical boundaries of this community? And what should the commission know about your community or other communities in Portland when considering where to draw the district boundaries? And we're going to, as we move through the meeting, we're going to kind of dive into the questions more, but when we're asking these questions, how we're engaging folks and the best time to bring this up, so to speak. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Apologies if it looks like I'm looking all over the place. I have the 2 screens going here.
Adam, can I just ask a clarifying question for Commissioner Hanson? So
yeah, sure.
At least the first 3 of the questions, and I didn't realize they were in a separate comment in the document, but it does look like they are generally well aligned with some of the questions that are on the screen as well. I think you're flagging them in terms of like they have some specific framing and they may be clearer, especially if presented to the public. That was your point, right?
I was basically taking what Commissioner Judd, like all of his ideas, and kind of distilling them down into a couple of more kind of simple, straightforward questions. For example, if we as a community engagement kind of working group decide that we want to share like 4 questions instead of like 15 questions, I thought these might be the ones that could bottom line it. So nothing new, just like rephrase.
I think it's a great flag. And thank you for clarifying. I was just reading both and just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Anyone else before I move on? Excellent. Okay. And so here is a breakdown of the Independent District Commission Engagement Plan. And you can see we have some of the different categories broken down and then have it broken out by month. Of course, email updates are going to be going out regularly throughout the duration of our community engagement. We're right around 300 folks that are on our Independent District Commission email list and growing quickly, which is great. I think we've been sending about 2 a month at the present clip, just letting folks know about public comment periods and the meetings as they happen. Stakeholder outreach is, you can see we're working on the criteria phase still, and we're in that public comment period 4. The draft districting criteria, we had the public hearing about a week and a half ago, I guess it is now, and I'm going to start doing, that ends at 8 a.m. on April 3rd, and that's when we go back into general public comment and stakeholder outreach and have the hearings, have the public comment ahead of the hearings in June, hold the public hearings in July, the vote in August. And once a vote is done, that in September, the IDC work is done, and Sophia and I work on the education aspect of letting folks know about what was decided. Written comments are being accepted from now all the way through July, and we will be collecting those public comments verbally during the 8 public hearings that we're holding in July, and have a variety of means of ways for folks to do so otherwise, be it through email directly to me or the Independent District Commission, dialing 311. We have an online public comment form that's available through our website, and doing our best to make sure people have as many ways as they can to get those comments to us. Verbal testimony, you can see we have the different opportunities for it. We had the March 13th in the hearing. At our next full group IDC meeting, we're going to be taking some verbal testimony, a couple opportunities in May on the 3rd and the 17th. And then the big one when we have the 8 public hearings in July, where we do the bulk of the verbal public comments. We have a multilingual community engagement toolkit. We had one that was specifically designed for the actual draft criteria hearing that we sent out to community stakeholders, y'all, and a variety of folks, so they could get the word out to have folks show up and testify. We also have, once we finish up this public comment period for draft criteria, we have a general toolkit that we will be using through the next couple of months, April and May, and then we'll have a hearing specific one that focuses on all of the opportunities, the when, the where, and how to sign up for folks for those public hearings. And then once we decide on, once there's a vote on districts, we'll have an educational toolkit that we design. Something that we have proposed but isn't written in stone yet is an ad buy, just to get drum up more community awareness of those public hearings when they happen in July. And we're also making some fact sheets with our communications team. One, we have a general one is in the works, and then the district plan one will be coming out later down the line in June. And the educational presentation, as far as that goes, we have we did one at the last public hearing, and we will be doing an educational presentation at other ones. So some questions to think about, and general discussion as well. But what engagement activities or strategies are missing? What strategies would you like the staff, Sophia and myself, to prioritize, and what educational materials are missing? And I open it up to the commissioners for discussion. I know that was a lot to take in. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Saw a hand raised, but then it went down.
Yeah, sorry, it was mine. If someone else would like to, I already have spoken this evening, so if someone else would like to speak first, please go ahead. Go ahead, Commissioner Kamara, I'll go after you.
Oh, you're muted, Commissioner.
I have to unmute myself and lower my hand because sometimes I forget to do one or the other. I don't know that, at least at this point, I guess my question is to all of us. Are we building the engagement strategy as opposed to having something that people can react to? Because right now, these are kind of theoretical strategies that I see. And yet the real execution is going to be in the July period when people react to the map and mapping and things that we've drawn. So how do we get people to understand that we don't have anything for them to look at and react against, but we still like their input. I mean, that's kind of, I have people who are not going to be able to do that because they said, well, you're not giving me anything to react against. And I just wanted to see what people's thoughts were on that.
And just to clarify your question, do you mean in the April to May period before any maps are voted on?
Yeah.
And an excellent point. And something to consider is that once we have the maps, that's actually when we have to have the maps in order to decide we'll have a good idea where the hearings will be when they're in person, but we have to have the maps drawn in order for that to happen, because we have to have 2 in each of those proposed districts. And as far as something we've discussed is that leading up to that, it's an excellent time to be asking these questions that we just discussed of folks. And also really diving in with the community engagement once we have those maps, because people will be able to react to them, and getting it out as quickly as possible once they're drafted, and really diving in and getting folks to turn out for those public hearings and do verbal testimony. And we have seen a little bit less engagement, to be perfectly honest. Folks are much more interested in the maps themselves than the criteria that was decided on to draw them. So we're expecting a big uptick once we have some maps for folks to respond to, compared to just the concept of how they will be drawn, so to speak. Does that make sense? Cool. Commissioner Judd.
Good evening, everyone. If I could take Commissioner Kimura's point a little bit further, and become a little bit more proactive. And so, Adam, one of the things that you just talked about was the certain level of reaction that we're getting right now. And I wonder how much, I think a focus on the communication plan is key. When are we communicating? What are we communicating? How are we helping the community track progress, understand their role, and the critical path? We talked about this after a few drinks in our last at the happy hour. But how do we communicate to everyone, commissioners that are on this team as well as outside of this team, and the community at large, what that critical path is that we're traveling, right? Because I think, to Commissioner Kimura's point, people may be waiting for a moment, not knowing that there are earlier moments for them to jump in, right? People may be assuming certain things are going to happen that may not be happening, right? And so I do think that, and we constantly hear in the public comments statements made that are either folks projecting responsibility onto the IDC that doesn't exist, that's outside of the scope. And so I think whether it's and the rubber really hits the road, obviously, when we start talking about these hearings, because one, if we take a step back and talk about, okay, what would success look like? Well, a fail would be if no one shows up, right? A fail would be if no one or if people show up and they have misconceptions about what that time and space is supposed to be about, right? A fail would be if they're not sure what the outcomes each one of these sessions are supposed to be about, or if they got confused about when their closest were, when their community was holding theirs and so forth. So I think just focusing in on what that communication plan in terms of content, timing, execution, what does it really look like is key for us right now.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And and just a quick response to that, we will in a little bit be getting into the community stakeholder brainstorming session. And it is our hope, at least, that a lot of that message will be carried by community stakeholders to the folks that they are directly connected with, and we're able to do that. Sorry, I'm just looking at something on my other screen here. But Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, I mean, I think so I really appreciate Commissioner Kimura and Commissioner Judd's comments just now. And I wonder if like one idea of what operationalizing that might look like is almost having like two waves of communication. So like wave one is like April, as soon as the criteria is set. Wave one is like, where should your district be? And then wave two is, and so that could be like, here are these handful of questions for you to react to. Like, here are all of these ways that we want you to give written testimony. Like, also knowing that we don't actually have a public hearing for like, where should your district be, which I think is fine, because I think it's more helpful for us to get that information in written form. But if wave one is like early April, it's like, where should your district be? What does community mean to you? Will you ever cross the river? Like, whatever it is. And then wave two is, maybe it's like if we have like 2 or 3 maps that we've like narrowed it down to, like, here's what we're thinking of, like, what are your reactions, right? Like, what do you think? So really thinking about it instead of, because I think a lot of the kind of the way the question was posed, I heard it really around how do we publicize these hearings in July? But what I'm hearing from the previous conversation is that we really need a like wave one before that, so people can actually answer these, have an opportunity to answer these questions a little bit earlier. So that's one thought. Autumn, did you have a response to that? Okay. And then a couple of other thoughts to just throw out there. So for the multilingual toolkit, I am curious what the languages are. I believe I couldn't pull it up, but I think the last one I saw was just Spanish English. I would be really curious. I would love to see if we could have the multilingual toolkit in like all of the languages that, for example, the Multnomah County Elections Office has ballots in. It's like 12 or 15 different languages. I think that would be great to have multilingual content in all of those languages, and also to make it really clear that we are also seeking feedback in languages besides English as well. I don't remember if that was a clear part of the last portion, but whether or not we have capacity for translation services in a myriad of languages in the real-time meetings that we could translate written as an idea. And then I'm just going to like share all of my thoughts in reaction to this. And then in terms of the media plan, love the idea of ad buys. I'm curious. I think that could also maybe be like, one round, depending on what the budget is, like one round of paid media in April and another in July. And I'm also really curious what an earned media strategy can look like if we try to like have the commission like write an op-ed that we get placed somewhere, if we have the co-chairs be interviewed, if we try to get it published like not just in the Oregonian but in Willamette Week and like some of the other more local, and if there are like community-based publications, kind of what is our pitch to people who are talking about democracy on their beat, or talking about like kind of what is our earned media strategy, also as a way of having people who are trusted in various pockets and communities throughout the city actually being the ones kind of inviting this feedback. And so figuring out that, would love to think through that. What were my other thoughts? Yeah, I think that was it for now. Oh, I have no idea what the ethics are on this, but if there's like any sort of like if you're a first-time commenter, you'll be entered into a drawing for a $25 Kudo gift card from the city of Portland or something, to like, I don't know if that would incentivize people, but those are just a few reactions.
Thank you for all of those. And we're recording the meeting and doing the minutes and everything, so we will note all of those, and all great ideas. Commissioner, and you're and don't apologize for sharing the great ideas as well all at once. We love to hear them. That's why we're here. I will then pass it to Commissioner Kimura. I saw your hand up, but now it's gone.
Well, I have to practice putting my hand down electronically and turning my microphone up because I frequently forget to do one or the other. All right. My question concerns the, what is it? The multilingual packet. One of the issues I have is we have some specific languages in our area that are not as well known as in other areas. And yet, when you look at the Portland Public School thing, what they do is based on how many languages the people check the mark that says they speak Spanish at home or they speak Russian at home. But we have people who are actually a smaller segment of the population, but probably who could use the information better because most of them are passionate citizens, but they don't always have the grasp of English and the nuance of something like this. And so is there a way of, yes, the Multnomah County thing about you can translate it into English, Vietnamese, Chinese, simplified Chinese, etc., is wonderful. We also have people who are Zomi speakers and who are Karen and Kachin speakers. How do we address the fact that they might be interested, but the nuances of redistricting would be lost on them if they just had to deal with it in English? And more importantly, when we get the feedback, is there somebody who can actually do the feedback in the language that is being presented so that we can really get reasonable comments? I did a survey once a long time ago where they asked all the questions in the same order. So I could actually input all of the data from the Russians, then the Vietnamese and the Chinese, because all the questions were in the same order. I could not do anything about the comments, and that was a lost opportunity to really get engagement down. So I'm asking if there's a way that we can do not just merely translating, but getting the feedback in the language that people speak, and then getting that translated so that we have that data and feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. And just real quick before Commissioner Lorente I call on you, I just wanted to point out, Sophia dropped in the comments that we are planning on translating the materials into Spanish, Somali, Vietnamese, Russian, and Chinese for starters. But great comments, thank you so much. And we have them all down. And Commissioner Lorente?
Yeah, I think just following up on that wave 1, wave 2 frame that Commissioner Hansen had offered and just kind of synthesizing the discussion thus far. I remember we had talked about a mapping tool on our website that we wanted to be accessible to community to, to kind of offer up maps that they want us to consider. And I wonder if that could be a component of that kind of wave 1 sort of work to kind of coincide with the data dive and mapping that we're going to be doing. Just kind of elevating that in our engagement plan leading up to June 1st as like hey, the commission is doing this work. Here's this tool, come engage with this tool, make a map, show us what you think, and then shifting gears once the maps do come out to then emphasizing the public hearings and how folks can engage in that arena too. I think there's might be some nice opportunities to synergize our work and get some really useful feedback through that tool if it's ready by then.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments? We're pushing a little bit past our time for this portion of the meeting. I just want to keep, so Sophia.
Thank you. I'm typing away taking notes for you all today. So really appreciate everyone's great thoughts and suggestions. I want to respond to everything, right, but I'm not going to because of time. But I think one question that I think that connects to the back of my mind is there's so many, right? Like Commissioner Kimura, you say there's a lot of groups that we want to reach out to, right? And groups of different speak different languages. And so I'm thinking, how could we maybe partner with specific organizations to be able to reach those groups? maybe that's specifically now to help us like permit, like do these 2 waves of outreach, or is it more like, do we do that with our public hearings? And so maybe that's something I'd want to pose to the group, is like, what types of organizations could we be working with now, or as staff, we can be starting to do that outreach too, to build those relationships to help us with this work.
Autumn?
First, Commissioner Judd, you're good.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't want to step on Sophia's point there. I was thinking about something different, but because let me just go back to her point real quick. I do think it's important for us to understand and what the current listening posts are within communities, whether it's churches, grocery stores, libraries, whatever they may be. That'll be helpful wherever we're holding these hearings, whether they're virtual or in person. Obviously, that they should be listening posts. So, so I completely agree that. And one of the, not only should we be looking to partner with those community partners that are out there that can help drive enthusiasm and feedback. But I was just wondering if we also have any community or marketing experts within the community that we could leverage and ask them, hey, look, we got a project that we need some expertise on, whether it's digital marketing or digital communications or otherwise. What's the best opportunities to get this message out, and given the short time frame that we have. And we have some pretty successful marketing groups that are in the Portland area that maybe willing to do this pro bono. So I think that getting that expertise sooner rather than later would help us a great deal.
Thank you. Sorry for missing your hand there. I was looking back and forth, Commissioner Judd. Autumn?
Oh, you didn't miss it. It was just swift. I had a couple, they're not so much questions that I think you have to address now, but I would probably challenge you to think about it. So let's start probably in reverse from where the conversation ended. So all of the commissioners were selected, like part of the criteria for selecting commissioners for the body was community ties, experience with community engagement, and this idea that together as a body, this group not just has expertise and kind of perspective and knowledge out of your own personal lived experiences, but also established connections and understanding of nuances and communities and relationships too. So, and there's no expectation that only the people in this room have them, right? But if you were to think about what roles commissioners should play, not just as a commission, as a body, as a team, as a group, but maybe as individuals or groups of smaller groups of individuals, are there potentially bridges or knowledge and expertise and ways that you can also help to establish some of that reach? So it's like, what might those look like? And we've actually have heard about some of them, right? A lot of them are statements of like, well, every time I'm talking to someone, I hear this, or in the last public hearing, right, it was like East Portlanders, it's just the most common thing I hear, the most common refrain that I hear is that I don't feel represented from East Portlanders, right? What would it mean to potentially formalize or organize a structure that actually had individuals doing some outreach too, and then bringing those listenings back to the team in a more formal way? So that's the first question. And then Commissioner Kimura, you started the discussion asking, how do we think about pre-July and post-July when we don't have anything concrete, like a map to respond to, right? I just wanted to point back to the last slide that actually had many of the questions and then the synthesized questions Commissioner Hanson put in the chat, right? One of the takeaways from the public hearing was that was that having a question, having a kind of question posed to community actually did yield a lot of specific feedback, and I think some insights too into clarifying how commissioners were thinking about the criteria. So potentially, and we've talked about posing some of these questions to the public before, right? That actually may be something, the questions that are personal and questions that people feel comfortable and knowledgeable answering, that aren't too technical or overwhelming, but then just ask them about their lived experiences and help your body make informed decisions. That could be enough of a concrete, a kind of concrete body of work to just respond to without asking people to actually draw maps, though drawing maps can be very fun. And some people really do get into it. So leading into that strategy can work. So just some thoughts on this first bigger discussion.
Thank you for those. And again, a reminder that we are, taking all this down. Sophia is typing away very quickly to capture all your thoughts, so we can kind of bring them all together and think about them, reflect, and really form a solid engagement plan off of your direction, and we appreciate it. Any other questions or comments before we move into the hearings?
I guess,
So-
sorry to interrupt. Oh, go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I mean, Autumn just asked, she asked a question. Do we answer that question, or is that like
I was about to say that I would love to hear your thoughts on that question Autumn posed.
So Autumn, I remember this. I was so excited about the first question, but then you asked you had made a second point. I remember the second point better than I remember the first question.
Now you're putting me on the spot there. Hold on, let me go back.
I wrote it down. Think about what roles different
Oh,
commissioners
yeah.
play to help get the word out.
Yes.
I mean, to me, that's like an absolutely yes, right? And I am like not above I don't know, everybody pulling up a Jamboard in a meeting and like writing who they're going to reach out to. So we have like mutual accountability, right? I mean, or like I do like the way of kind of what I hear in that also is like an invitation to all of the commissioners to like have a sense of ownership over this process as well, and like not just the four of us who are here in this room, the four commissioners in this room, that like everyone has a opportunity, obligation, responsibility to kind of reach out with their communities to bring them in. And then Autumn, the second question you asked or kind of the second part of that is like, how do we formalize a way for commissioners to bring what they have heard in more informal settings back to the group? And that I think is a really important question. That, yeah, I don't know if other people have ideas about, but.
I should say there's technically any commissioner, anytime using a formal channel by connecting with staff can report that back. And that can be included in a comment and in the comment record. So that is one way that exists, but it hasn't necessarily been embraced as something proactive and the kind of like encouraging individuals to take that push to solicit it. It exists, the channel is there for sure, but it's just not built into the workflow yet, the common workflow.
And to your first point, again, understanding the communication plan so that when let's say collectively, the IDC says we're going to make a social media post or a LinkedIn post, or whatever it might be, it will be, again, in terms of communication, the timing of it so that everyone is doing it collectively at the same time, the message or content of it so that folks are putting out not something that's editorialized, but more consistent with the overarching themes and values that we all have and agreed upon. So those things would be important to put some thoughtful energy behind to make sure, again, that the sequencing, the content, the methods all are synchronized and make sense. And sorry. And the reaching out to other commissioners, I think is going to be extremely important. We actually have on our commission, because this person told me this, folks who specialize in digital marketing for campaigns. So, you know, reaching out to the broader commissions would be great. And also, again, this is something that was inspired by fermented drinks that we had a couple weeks ago. But like, you know, there's the output of what IDC is designed to do, which is these maps. And I think we all understand that that's the output. But as we talk about the community engagement plan and the transparency here, I think that one of the other important deliverables that we have, again, it's the process itself, right? The transparency, whatever, how are we defining equity, that all those things that as we go through this, that is also the kind of the legacy of this inaugural team that comes together and does this. So I think it's important that, again, that as we think through this, whether it's the making sure that we reach out to community groups and having that part of the things that we're communicating, that we are doing these things, that we have a multilingual toolkit that's going to help us do this, that we're reaching out to community partners and we value their input, that communication plan highlights the process that we're going through, because it is a key deliverable, I think, beyond just the maps, that's going to have a legacy to it, a quality of legacy to itself, onto itself.
Thank you for those thoughts. And I know that, so Commissioner Hanson and Commissioner Judge had a chance to respond to the questions. Commissioner Kimura or Commissioner Lorente, did you have anything to add?
I actually want to post something. The official schedule. I have taken kind of the opportunity as I talk to people to tell them what we're doing so that they know that this is kind of, please wait for it, it's coming to you kind of thing. But if somebody wants to give me input, what do I do? Tell them wait until, you know, July before you give me your input? Or how do we handle that?
As far as public comment goes?
Yeah, their public comment.
Well, the multiple channels that we discussed a little bit earlier, they can email the IDC email directly, they can email me, they can go to the IDC website, and there's a link for public comment on the website. We are currently taking public comment for the draft criteria, but that period ends on April 3rd, so they can then do more general comments after that. And they can also call 311. And Sophia?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Commissioner Kimura, something that I've done in other commissions and bodies like this is like, right, you're talking to people, you all have your networks, and we've set up like essentially like a Google form, right, where you all can quickly fill in, like, I talked to, you know, so and so, generally speaking, around this time, and high level summary, like these are the things that they were interested about. Do you think you all would be interested in something like that to help us track engagement and see like who we're talking to?
I think that would help, because that way I can say, look, you said this in March. Now is your time to officially make a comment. You can call, you can write an email, you can go do the 311 or the email thing. I also hope digitally that these are available with a phone, because a lot of people only have the phone to do the comment. And I want to be careful that we don't cut people out because they don't have a computer or they don't have a tablet or any of those other kind of things.
Yeah, just to quickly answer to that, we have, if anyone calls 311, we have, now it's running 24/7, it's a city service, and they can just say like in the language that they'd like, that they want to give testimony to the, district commission, and they can say it in their language, and then the translator will transcribe it for us in our public comment form.
Thank you.
And thank you for those ideas, and definitely, if you're interested in that, we are always happy to follow up with folks that are your contacts as well if you send them to us, because it's a reminder of changing comment periods and whatnot. Commissioner Lorente, did you have anything to add to the questions before we move on?
No, we can move on.
Okay, cool. All right, and just bring them both up here. And thank you for all of that. It was great. Moving both of my slides forward. So we have the July public hearings. You've seen this breakdown of dates before, and outreach is public notice and media advisory, community stakeholder outreach, and community partners. Public comment period is June 1st to July 22nd for the draft maps. And some things to note about the hearings themselves. We have to have all the public hearings be hybrid. So the language is, if it's an in-person meeting, there has to be a virtual component. If it's a virtual meeting, there has to be an in-person component. So essentially all of them have to be a hybrid meeting of some sort. So it's something to consider, because we need to have them in the districts themselves, and that's where community partners would come in, as well as places that we could have them where we have access to do that. And that's something we could figure out with logistics, but it's helpful if it's a place that we could have has the internet capacity and the camera and to hook up the Zoom, but also have a room full of folks. Then that would fall under where to hold the in-person meetings and what types of partners would we like to partner with as far as community stakeholders go for those meetings. What engagement should we add before and or after the hearings? Listening sessions, surveys, ad buys, like we mentioned before. What educational materials y'all are envisioning, and yeah, so that is kind of a quick breakdown. I know we're running a little behind schedule, but keep in mind that we're also going to be doing a little bit of brainstorming to wrap up as far as some of who these community stakeholders could be that we engage with and perhaps even partner with for the hearings. So if anybody wants to respond to any of that, now's the time. Yeah, Commissioner Kimura.
Hey, well, one thought that we have used reasonably successfully has been to use high schools. They have a big space and they're set up to do media stuff. The issue with them is that you have to make sure that you get on their schedule early because they also have high school activities. So as soon as we can reasonably decide where these districts are, I think getting a space that can accommodate a hybrid is important. I just went through this we have the Hazelwood Project for gun violence, and we couldn't find any place that accommodates more than 25 people. So we have to break it down into two different groups. And some people didn't want to go to the police station, and other people didn't want to go to any kind of religious institution. So it becomes a really challenge to get a big enough space that it can accommodate. So the earlier the better is what I'm saying. If we can at all make some of that stuff, at least have a placeholder, because the only other space that might be big enough might be hospital auditoriums. Other than that, most of our spaces, at least east of 82nd, tend to be smaller and cannot accommodate any kind of big group when you have that, plus the need for the media digital hookup.
For sure. And just to clarify, before the maps are drawn, we're definitely going to be reaching out to a variety of potential venues to, like you said, have placeholders. So we're not jumping right into it once the maps are drawn. Anyone else have any thoughts? And thank you again for that insight. Going once.
I'm just curious to see, how do folks feel about working with like different community partners or community organizations to help like promote the hearings or potentially even host the hearing? I know obviously we don't know what the maps would look like, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, if I may, most of the community partners would be willing to do it, but they don't normally have a big enough space. So it could be a finite audience that you want to reach with community partners, and that would help. But you know, I even thought about talking to the what is it? The Federated States of Micronesia have a consulate, and they have space, but they're essentially a government office. So I don't know if we can get space to do something like this.
Commissioner Lorente?
Yeah, just so following up on Commissioner Kimura's suggestion of high schools or of schools in general, I believe most schools should be out come July, so I would guess some of those spaces would be available to us if we wanted to. I'm also thinking about some of the objectives in our community engagement framework and the specific constituencies that we wanted to reach and target. And I think I'm just synthesizing the suggestion of using schools with engaging young Portlanders, students, and potentially doing work with like organizations like Next Up to do some maybe co-partnership for some of these spaces. I'm also thinking of groups like Apano, which have that community space on 82nd and East Portland, which might be a good opportunity to reach out to see if that's something that's available to us. Just some initial thoughts reacting to these questions here.
Thank you for those. Autumn?
This one is just an idea, and it may be along the same line as schools, but potentially libraries as well. They may just get booked up in terms of events and evening access, but there's also evening and daytime access, which I think is something to consider with all the spaces as well. And then if you weren't, I don't know if the commission is interested, but there might be partners, those like business alliances or within the private sector that have larger office spaces that are used potentially to accommodate bigger events, bigger meetings that could work effectively. And some of those do exist east of the river because they're in converted spaces and things like that. So just a couple of ideas based on some of the feedback there.
Thank you. Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, my thought on that is I mean, again, I do like the idea of partnering with community organizations, especially around like targeted outreach. I would want to be mindful from like a holistic perspective that we're mindful of like the representation of the various organizations that we're partnering with, like for example, and like especially if we're, I think, physically in a place that is hosted by like a for-profit company or whoever it is, like to just make sure that we are very clearly like by the people for the people, as it were, which yeah. And then in terms of educational materials, I think like a nice one pager that people could flyer, like I think I'm a fan sometimes of just like old school flyering sometimes where people go in libraries and schools and things like that. I also do think that as we did in the public hearing last week, that there should definitely be an educational component at the beginning of the event itself. So we are not assuming any amount of knowledge really before coming in. And I also think educational materials, part of that in, if we go with this wave 1, wave 2 approach that we talked about, that part of that could also be questions and kind of what we're looking for, or like what success looks like what information we're looking for, what could be really helpful. So, and since I do have to jump off in just a minute, the last couple of things I'll say is, number one, if y'all are want to have a follow-up conversation to this before next week's meeting, if you're not able to finish before the rest of folks have to jump off, I would be open to that. And I would also be open to bringing some of these questions to the full commission on Wednesday if we have time after the vote. Specifically a way to, it could, and it doesn't even have to be like a full conversation, but if there's a way to a Google form or something to just capture everyone's thoughts on what educational materials they think, what partner groups they think we should, what venues they have top of mind, right? Among the 4 of us, we've just had a really great brainstorm, and with 13, there might even be more ideas. So even if there's 10 minutes for a quick reflection and giving feedback, I think that would be a useful use of time. And with that, just huge amounts of gratitude to this whole group. And I'm so sorry I do have to jump off.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Hanson. And anybody else have any? I do want to acknowledge that we're getting close to our stop time. And as Sophia pointed out, we do have time blocked out in the next meeting for a report back on this meeting, and for the full group meeting that's happening next week. And that is actually something I was going to ask for next steps. But any other thoughts? I'm going to do a quick rundown of community stakeholders just to give you some ideas for buckets of community stakeholders that we've created as far as we're doing outreach to. And we are going to make a list. We have a list already. We're going to add to it and send it out to the engagement folks, so y'all can review and add anybody that you think we're missing as far as community stakeholders go. But any other thoughts on this before I show you all those buckets really quick?
So I just want to point out that a lot of these questions we actually talked about and ideated earlier in the conversation. So education materials, again, I think we obviously all of us feel the need for an understanding of the calendar of events and what the process is going to be like in the critical path for community members to all, and again, reiterating what is actually the scope of IDC versus what's not the scope will be really helpful. I think the list that you have in terms of what engagement should we add before and or after the hearings, this is one of the key questions I think we definitely want to take back to the broader IDC Commission, because I think that there's going to be some more ideas there that would be really helpful for us to get our arms around and to create that alignment there. So
awesome. Thank you. All right, let me just bring up this last slide really quick for y'all so you can check it out. And like I said, we had a little bit of time for a brainstorm, but we can follow up with this after as well. These are the buckets that we've created for the community stakeholders to do outreach to: academic, cultural and service organizations, unions, neighborhood associations, civic engagement groups, and city staff and employees and whatnot themselves, the commissioners and such. So kind of some frames for you to think of, and we will follow up with our list of organizations and groups and stakeholders and allow y'all to provide feedback on that and let us know if there's anybody that we're missing. Also helpful if you have good contacts to reach out to at some of those stakeholders that we don't already have direct connections with. That would be helpful as well. Any thoughts on the buckets? So we're not missing any general buckets, keeping in mind that we will have a number of organizations that we send along to you after, this week. We can send that out to you.
We don't have like churches, synagogues, mosque listed.
I think there might be some under the cultural, but that is definitely something we can work on. Autumn?
I realize I'm not positive if this is included under the cultural and service organizations, but it's ones that are specifically focused on youth. I know that at least a couple commissioners have specifically said, I think actually Commissioner Lorente, you were specifically talking about youth outreach in the community engagement plan.
And we actually have received, you'll see in the next public comment report, we have received some comments on behalf of youth groups already for the draft criteria. Spoiler alert for you, but yes, absolutely. And sorry that it's kind of the top lines here. We didn't have much of a chance to dive into the brainstorming itself, but something, so like these groups are great to think about, and would love to hear more of those ideas once we get you our starter list of community stakeholders, so to speak.
We also, I don't know the layers on the neighborhood associations, but there are affordable housing communities like Hacienda that will be great to get their input and their involvement in these processes. I mean, they're very active community partners.
Awesome. Anybody have any other thoughts, ideas, comments, questions on this before? Excellent. And then just kind of next steps in wrapping it up, so to speak. Again, the meeting is being recorded. It's going to be posted on the commission website. We're also, so we do have that time dedicated in the next meeting, and we're going to take all of this wonderful feedback, comments, questions, concerns that y'all have given us tonight, and package it up to report back to the full commission. And we were wondering if we could get a volunteer. We'll do a lot of the behind the scenes work to prep it for the presentation and everything. But if there's anybody from the community engagement work group that would be interested in reporting that back to the larger group.
I just received a text from Commissioner Hanson, says that she'd like to volunteer to do it.
Can we see that text? I'm just joking. If I recall correctly, it might be in the minutes. You tried to volunteer the last time we asked for this too. Oh, sorry. Wednesday, April 5th, not the 3rd. If I said the 3rd, I might have been conflating it with the public comment period ending. Apologies for that. Thanks for pointing that out, Autumn. And we can also figure that out in the follow-up later. But if there's anybody that wants to volunteer now, we would love it. Otherwise, we will voluntold you in our follow-up emails of community stakeholders.
I've taken very detailed notes, so we'll follow up.
I will say, I believe most of you in the last meeting, one of the follow-up meetings, actually contributed after the presentation, and I think everyone benefited from it. It was very excellent, getting your perspective. Just applying a little flattery there.
Yeah, 100% agree with that statement too. There was some great back and forth when we did the report back the last time. So,
but think about it. Adam, actually, as a point of, I think, order, I'm not sure. I don't actually think you ever formally approved the minutes at the top of the meeting.
No, we did not.
I think you said you were going to, but I don't think you did. And I apologize, I forgot that.
Whoops. Sophia, can we still do that now really quick before we close? I just wanted to make sure we have enough folks. Yeah, we still have enough commissioners here. We just need a motion to approve those minutes and a second, correct?
a motion to approve the last meeting's minutes.
Second.
I second.
All right. All those in favor? Hand raised. I see Commissioner Judd. I see Commissioner Lorente. I can't see Commissioner Kimura. All right. So the meeting minutes have been approved, and with that, I think that we are good to go. Thank you again so much for all the wonderful feedback, questions, and everything, y'all, and taking the evening to join us and discuss community engagement. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.